Save that. Start recording. And cue the music. Really? Let's try that again. Cue the music.
Welcome to episode 147 of the Furlo Bros Tech Podcast. Today is July the 20th, 2014. I'm Matthew Dean Furlo, and this is James.
Hi. I was expecting an intro, something related to current events. What's going on?
Nothing's going on. It's one of those. I was like looking through the movies, and no movies came out, no big sporting events. Levi Stadium opened up, but I mean, not too much fanfare, and it's just a slow one. Not much of anything. I gave myself a black eye last night. Is about it, which was fun.
Looks like it's already healed.
Oh, it wasn't.
Okay,
it wasn't
all
too
right,
bad
all
of
right.
a shiner.
In the right shadow, I see it.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad of a shiner. I was encouraged to stage dive, and I decided to take the advice. At which point I promptly jumped and nobody caught me, and I hit the ground. But I was okay. I rallied. I got back up on stage, and at which point they were all like, everybody was disappointed that I didn't really stage dive. So they started to grab me to throw me, and I was like, this is a really bad idea, guys. We're not going to do this twice. And when they finally picked me up and had me in the air, and I realized I would not be able to fight against them, I was like, okay, let me actually do it. And so I got everybody in close to the stage, and then did it again, and which worked a lot better. But that time, I nailed somebody's head with my face, and it was rough. It was rough, James. It was rough. That's the first time I'd ever stage dove, and it was tried to crowd surf, and it was not as successful as I might have liked it to be.
Wow.
But that was pretty much my weekend. That was like the highlight of it. That's not true. I actually had some really awesome stuff going on this weekend. Went on a date Friday night, which was cool, but it's again,
Are you gonna go on another date?
I'm sure hoping.
Nice.
She said she'd be willing to, but who knows? Sometimes they're just, oh yeah, we can totally do this again. Never picks up the phone again.
Yeah. Did you watch that YouTube video that our sister sent about that TED Talk about dating?
No.
Did she send it to you? Let's start with that.
Yes, I meant to watch it and got distracted.
So it's a TED Talk. So a little more incentive for you.
Yeah, that helps.
And it's about dating essentially, and this idea of how your essentially your emotions cloud your judgment, and so you need to actually rely on your friends and family to help you determine if that person's right for you or not, because you will convince yourself that that's the person, and then logic will no longer talk to you. So it was Lisa's way of saying, hey family, when I start dating people, let me know, for real. This honest feedback is appreciated. But she didn't actually say that. She just sent the video, and apparently she had other friends who were like, are you trying to send me a subtle hint here that I need to break up with my boyfriend? It's like, no, that wasn't it at all. But the point of it being, or one of her things in the talk was that you shouldn't be like, oh man, I hope this person really likes me. It should be more like, I'm going to decide if I really like this person, and be more of a choose your, don't just try to adapt to whoever it is and hope whoever it is likes you. Be more like, no, I'm a catch, and I'm going to decide if they're right for me. But there it is.
Well, okay. I'll be honest, because I have not watched the video, but and I hope she doesn't listen to this podcast just out of curiosity, trying to find out more about me. But we actually had that conversation where we talked about like being your own person within a relationship and how like and how
Mm.
the bane of my past relationship, my most disastrous one
You
was
talked about an old relationship.
we both
First
did.
date?
Yeah,
And then
it
you
was
stage dived. Sounds like a winning.
yeah, it was a heck of a James. Honestly, I'll be totally honest. There were like five things that are like off limit topics first time I talk to people. Like I don't bring
Yeah.
them up, and I talked about every single one of them. It was just like I got done with it. I'm like that was a disaster. It was an unmitigated disaster. She doesn't seem to hate me, so that's good. But we did
You just
talk
got
about.
class.
I think I'm hoping. I'm hoping that it's. I'm hoping I'm just a catch.
It
Because
shouldn't
she
matter.
seemed, yeah, yeah. 'Cause
Totally.
we talked about that idea of like you want to be your own person, then you want to maintain your independence within the context of a relationship. That way
Mm.
you're still a compelling person. You're not just some hollow form of what you think they want, because that's usually unsatisfying. And
So you're not
um,
your Facebook wall. You're more complete.
yeah, exactly, and yeah, but yet the very thing you walk away from it, the very next moment, as soon as she gets out of the car, is God, I hope she likes me.
Yeah.
What did I do? So
Cool.
yeah,
But that's not why we're here this
it's
week.
not. Oh man, I like talking about that kind of stuff though.
No.
But that's not why we're here. This week, there's a lot of stuff to talk about this week. This week, like every week, we will be talking about technology and the continuing corporate opera, or the soap opera of corporations dealing back and forth, the people working for them, their marketing campaigns, and of course, the technology they're developing. But before we get into the heart of the show, Jim's got a short disclosure he wants to throw our way.
Yes, I work for HP and HP's new board of directors. However, I do not represent HP or any of HP's opinions.
Nice. Cool. If you want to follow us throughout the week, because our lives are exciting and adventurous, and
Shouldn't
on
laugh at that
board.
either. Yours is. Mine isn't.
Oh, that's not true. You've got.
I go around measuring rooms. That was the highlight of my week. So
Yeah, compared to my stage dive, that's probably
yeah, I found this
What's
new
it
app
like?
called Room Scan that lets you do floor plans automatically using your iPhone without having to use a tape measure and graph paper. It's so awesome.
I did read your blog post about that. Um,
Gotta admit, it was like semi cool.
no, it's very cool. It's a cool piece of technology. And if you want to learn more about that sort of thing, you can follow us throughout the week at our social media sites. The
Yeah,
two big
I
ones.
am at James Furlo on Twitter and jamesfurlo.com on the web.
It was just all right.
Just spicing things up a little bit since
Stage
it was
it
a
out. All
boring
right.
week.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. I am at Matthew D. Furlow on Twitter. My Instagram is nextwigan4. Yeah, that was weird. And now you can also go to furlowbros.com. That's where we got all our links to all the articles we talk about throughout the week and the videos and all the cool stuff. So go check that out, furlowbros.com. That's the place to be. But unlike the rest of the world, this was not a super boring week for tech. It was actually there's interesting things going on.
Yeah, in a little bit, we'll talk about how much Apple hates IBM and how much Microsoft hates their employees. But first, we're going.
The answer is not much and a lot in that order.
Yeah, yeah. But first, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Um, have you always wanted to be a Jedi?
Yes, I have.
Good.
Until I
Good.
started hating Star Wars, and then I still think I
That's
want to
right.
be a Jedi, but
So, this recently came on my radar via my wife. So, it probably is really old, but whatever. um, uh, it's this article about the Mayo, MYO, Mayo. It is an armband that um, can track your. I can't remember what they're called now. Here, I should probably go back a page here so I can remember it. It tracks your arm movements and your the muscles and the movements of your fingers and stuff in your arm. It like has like a whatever the arm equivalent of a like an EEG is.
Okay.
Um, so like for example, so this thing, it literally think of it like you know those sweat armbands that the cool athletes would wear or like tennis players would wear, I guess.
Yes.
Which is sadly not cool, but they would still wear them anyways. So it kind of looks like that. Or if you had tennis elbow, it'd go in that exact same spot. And if you open and close your hand, it can recognize it. If you lift your arm up, it recognizes it, or move it to the side, it can recognize it. And so essentially what this thing becomes is a controller using your arm. And so they did all sorts of examples where and we'll link to this article by Dipley. When you go to the article, there's like 4 pages. Click next page. Okay, keep going because the first page doesn't give you a ton of information. I missed that the first time around until I started reading the comments and went, I feel like there's more to this article. So, and there are. Even though it says very clearly page 1 of 4 at the top, I missed it because I just care about the content. But anyways, they show this guy like playing a game where it's a first person shooter and it's like he's holding a gun pretending to, and it can sense when you pull the trigger on it. And when you move back and forth, they showed it as using it for a music control system where you could flick your wrist and you could like swipe and it would go to the next song, or you could like put your hand up and it would stop it like you were a police officer, things like that. And then they said that they've designed it so that you can actually connect 2 up on each wrist, and so you can get full on movement and whatever. And I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, I guess. And then they took it a next step further, and I saw the future, essentially.
Okay.
I've got this video that is on page 3 of this, so it's hidden. But what they did was they wrote some software to go with the Oculus Rift, where they said essentially what it does is they created a set of arms that, according to the Oculus Rift, look like the arms are in the normal position for you, and then as you move your arms and do stuff, it responds to it. And
Weird.
And yeah, I watched the video, and they were like, I don't know about you, but they were saying, because you've tried it, but there's moments of like, oh my gosh, this is like you lose yourself in the world, right?
Yeah.
And then they say, but then you might move, and it doesn't feel as much like it necessarily. They said with this, where all of a sudden you can see your own arms in this world, they went, you now feel like you're totally in it for longer than just a few seconds. They're like, you're there. And they show videos of people playing with them, and they essentially made it so you could throw like magic fireballs, like Mario style, out of your hands, and so you could lift them and you could throw a fireball and it would then go and like catch trees on fire and stuff.
Dude, there is gonna be a wicked awesome Last Airbender video game where it's gonna be basically like it's gonna be a fighting game like Street Fighter or something, but you're all like earthbenders and firebenders and airbenders and waterbenders.
That sounds great.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah, no, it's totally airbender. Think magic, think Mario, think Star Wars was their example for it, where it's this idea of you can use the Force, and I can imagine you get a lightsaber component. Could you imagine if somehow you could combine the Oculus Rift with this on a Sony PlayStation, where they've got the little magic wand things?
Yeah.
and you totally feel like you've got a lightsaber
Well,
and are.
the really cool part about what they're doing is all you really need to do is to give somebody like a paper towel roll, because theoretically you're
Oh,
tracking
okay,
their
yeah,
arm and they're holding it. You know, now you're just getting in something to feel. You know, it feels like it. You could, because you technically could do it without it. Um,
that's true. That's true. I didn't even think about that. So this thing's coming out in September. Pre-order right now for only $149.
that ain't bad.
That's very reasonable. Now it looks like you would want two, so probably $300. Um, but yeah, pretty darn awesome. There's a um, on the fourth page. There's just a bunch of videos. I highly recommend um, just going and looking at the their kind of their intro video, and then the one where they're using the Oculus Rift with it, because you're just like, oh, that's awesome, very
Yeah,
cool, I
that
like it.
seems really cool. I can't wait for. You know, I think the big step on a lot of this stuff is that you got to come out with a whole package. You got to come out with the Oculus Rift or some sort of a competitor, that you got to come out with the control system, whether that's the Sony, you know, wand things, or this, or you know, all the different things that are out there. You got to settle on one, sell it as a complete package, and there's got to be a game that is so compelling that you can't play without this, that everybody's going to want to get. I mean, you got to build a system selling game and then sell it as a package.
Yeah,
And until you get to that point, you know, these are all going to be interesting novelties, or even, you know, really impressive pieces of hardware that just never make it anywhere. So it will be really interesting to see that. I think somebody's got to come up with a game that cannot be played without this,
right.
and then, you know, and whoever does that is going to win. You know, the halo of this experience. Um, but it seems really cool. Seems really cool. I'm optimistic for it.
I think it's like you said. Or I think you said it actually maybe last week or 2 weeks ago. There seem to be enough players in this space now where something's got to work.
Yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
kind of has that same like smartwatch feel. There's enough people doing it, someone's gonna get it right eventually.
yeah,
And then
yeah,
once they do, and it's proven, it'll just be an avalanche. Think iPhone.
right.
Which it may take more years than we want because everyone's headed in this one direction. It really requires someone else to kind of say, actually, this is what we want.
Yeah. But it's, you know, I really, I gotta believe that it's the killer app syndrome here is really what's required.
Yeah.
You need a system seller, and I think you know, and really and truly it'll be interesting. Like, I keep thinking Sony's in the best position for this, and if they can come up with a system selling app, you know, game, to move their Project Morpheus VR stuff, you know, they're in the best, at least to be the early winner in this market. They're in the best position. But we
I
will,
agree.
we will see, because I think this other stuff is really cool, and it's got a lot of potential outside of just playing video games with the Oculus Rift. But if people aren't buying them, what the heck? Uh, so, what's his name? My hero, uh,
Elon Musk.
Elon Musk. They made a big, his car company, Tesla, made a big announcement this week. They are going to be selling a cheaper Tesla, and it has a name officially. This new, you know, it's long been announced that they've got the plan of, they started out with the Roadsters, which is like their high-end luxury or their high-end sports car. Then they came in with their quote mid-tier luxury car, which is like the Model S, the Model X. And by mid-tier, they mean like $100,000 car. So now they're
Yeah.
coming out with their cheap car, the one for the plebeians.
For the masses.
It's a $3,500 car, and originally it was going to be called
Okay.
the Model E. Turns out Ford was not super pleased with them using that name, as it is something that they evidently have copyrights on. It's funny when they first said, like, you know, when I first read the controversy, I you know I was like, uh, I was like, really? What's the Model E? Like, what car are they? Do they have that's a Model E thing? And finally it occurred to me that, oh yeah, that's right. It's one of the first ones, right behind the Model T. Uh, but yeah, so Tesla had to change the name, and they've officially announced what it will be. And so they liked the general shape of the letter E, so they just flipped it around, and they're calling it the Model 3.
Boom.
Yeah. So it's their third generation car, and yeah, it's exciting.
So do we know anything about it yet?
It's going to be about $3,500. It'll go about 200 miles on a charge. I'm going to own one day. Those are
35
oh,
grand is still a chunk of money for a vehicle.
that's a really nice car. I mean, you know, that's nothing to scoff at. That's more than I paid. Let's be real. Um,
Let's see here. That is more than I have paid for all of my cars combined.
re yeah, me too. By a long shot
Yeah,
for me.
it's all right. Okay, so we don't know anything about it. We just know the name.
Yeah, we also know that it's coming out sometime soon. It doesn't actually say in this. Okay, wait. Tesla says the Model 3 will come sometime after their SUV, the Model X, which should ship sometime in 2015. Alas, there's still no concrete evidence as to what the Model 3 will look like, though it is said to look like a smaller version of the somewhat wide-bodied Model S. So there's sleek and sexy Model S. They're just basically going to make it a little bit more different,
Mm,
and that'll be it. I'm pretty excited.
I can tell. You know nothing about it, and you're like, I'm gonna buy one.
Yeah,
Well, you just like Tesla cars in general.
yeah. I like the company. I like what they're doing. I mean, it's so clearly the future of transportation.
Nah,
It's and nah. Just
it's
you
an
know,
intermediate step
to what? Nuclear,
to something different. To
nat
bicycling.
natural gas. Well, I mean, the whole thing about it is, and the genius behind it, and one of the reasons why, from an infrastructure perspective, it makes complete sense, is it's sort of like what we've done with it is a essentially what is gas? Gasoline is a power container. It has electrical potential built into its chemical bonds. It's got electrical potential in the form of a chemical, and then we release that electrical potential and convert it directly into through heat and combustion into mechanical energy. Well, this one is like so we do that all within the combustion motor. Well, the brilliance of the electric car, and I think the reason why it's like I kind of view as kind of your ultimate in ground-based
Driving experience.
transportation. And what you'll see for a long, long, long time is that what it basically does is the whole idea is it liberates you from any particular power system. So we have all these debates in our infrastructure of it's like there's this new movie coming out soon, documentary talking about why are we still on gasoline? Why hasn't natural gas taken off? Why hasn't propane taken off? Why are these other very abundant and cheap gas sources so not used when it would be so easy to convert cars? And they're
Yeah.
making they're making the argument that it has to do with who owns the patents on gas uh, on gas pumps, and that they're legally they've effectively, the big gas companies they've got all these patents, they've got all these things, and then they got rules put in place on a governmental level that kind of say that this is what a gas pump should be, and it should have 86 octane, 88, and 91 or whatever, the different levels of octane, but it's all gasoline octane, and they're saying, if you could actually start independent gas stations and you could you could change some rules, you could easily have like 5 different types of gas, and then all of a sudden you could really
Huh.
expand the infrastructure. And I sit there and and they have like in this trailer for this video, they have like a 10-second clip with Elon Musk talking about electric cars, and I think, although I think what they're talking about is interesting, and it's, it shows, and it has interesting commentary on our economy and our government and power and stuff. I think the real point is that you've got all these different forms of storing, producing mechanical energy, but they're like, but if you could kind of like neutralize all that and just say we don't care where the power comes from, it's just a battery, then it really opens up. I don't know. To me, electric cars are where it goes. That's why it's actually, to be totally honest, that's the biggest reason why I say I'm going to own a Tesla one day. And not because I think Teslas are super cool, but I just think that within 50 years, everybody's going to own electric cars, and I'm hoping that Tesla is still one of the big players in the market. I just think it's, if you are alive long enough, and I think 50 years is long enough, we'll all own an electric car, and they'll, because it's just, you get rid of the the power delivery problem, which is cool. It's exciting. It's happening. Get used to it.
Prepare yourself.
Exactly. So there were some big doings this week.
There were.
Not just
announcements, really.
Yeah, actually, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny that you would say that, because as I'm looking through our list of articles, pretty much nothing actually happened except one of them. There was mostly just a lot of big announcements. The beginnings. So Apple
in the middle of summer, you're like, we're not gonna actually do anything. It's summer.
But
ridiculous. We got ideas. We just got back from our retreats, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a hint of truth to that.
Oh yeah, it's so true. Nobody's talking about us right now. Let's announce something. The one company that actually did something is getting beat up for it because it's not good enough.
Wait, which company was that?
Amazon.
Is that on our list?
Yeah, it's all the way in Friday, man. It's Friday. They
release it. You have the actual word "announce" in there.
Oh, do I? That's funny. That's, and you want to know why? Is because that's the title of the article, but I'm already using the service, so you know what? We'll get there. We're not going to talk about that quite yet. What we're talking about right now is the settling of a blood feud as old as time.
The Montagues and
the Capulets.
The Capulets are finally getting married at the hip.
Exactly. Which is so funny, because it's like, I think a lot of the perspective of the whole IBM and Apple are partnering up is what we're talking about, if you're not following. They made a big announcement this week that they are going to be doing an enterprise endeavor together, where Apple will be handling the cloud and IBM will be handling the hardware. And that's not true. Wait, switch that. So it's basically IBM is going to be creating a suite of like 100 different enterprising apps for Apple-specific hardware, software suites, making them in Swift is what they're trying to say. And
really,
probably, I'm assuming, but probably there's a lot of C or Touch. I mean, Cocoa Touch involved. But yeah, so they're coming together, and they're going to be doing this. It's going to be awesome.
And again, in case you missed the pictures, there's an awesome one of Steve Jobs flipping off IBM.
Yeah.
And like the most iconic commercial ever was Apple literally bashing on IBM.
Yeah. It's funny. Tie in here. So I'm listening to 1984 because I'm using Amazon's unlimited book thing. And I was just listening to the 2 minutes of hate scene, and it was like the whole time I'm like listening it, I'm thinking of that commercial with the hammer. Obviously, I think one of the things that's just funny about this is that my sense has been, and this has been confirmed in a couple of the articles that I've read, is that that whole like blood feud between those two companies was something that has been over for a long time. People haven't
Yeah.
really thought about it, but what it was the whole Steve Jobs biography came out, and it just reminded everybody, all the different biopics, that that was the big boogeyman early on. They were the towering,
Yeah, and then Apple came out with the iPod, and well, about
yeah, exactly.
that. Being big ain't so bad.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah, yeah. I mean, jeez Louise. But so I don't know. It's interesting. This is a yeah. It's an interesting move. I think practically, it makes sense for both companies. Obviously, I mean that's
You know what this
pretty much
reminds me of?
what.
This reminds me of when you're playing the game Monopoly, and you own a couple properties in one block, and someone else owns a couple properties in one block, and you know how like no one has a monopoly, but you all kind of got properties all spread across the board, and you're kind of going, you're all kind of making money, you're all losing a little bit of money, but you're like, we're going to be here for 30 days playing. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? You're just like, there's no end in sight for this game, type of thing. And
right.
so you get that one intrepid player who goes, I'm going to change things up a little bit. Let's negotiate a deal.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, two players, you go, I'll give you this one property if you give me those two properties, and I'll give you this other one. And the result will be we'll have two monopolies and everyone else will be hosed. Or you know what I mean? Or everyone else will still be in their frame set. And and you know what I mean? And then it's
yeah,
like, okay, the game is now going to end.
yeah,
And it's still going to take 5 hours to play. Don't get me wrong. And now what you'll start to see is the next turn, some other player goes, "Hey, want to make a deal?"
yeah,
And these deals get increasingly creative, and things start to move, and that original deal will start working out for one player really well and not so well for the other player, so they'll make another deal to try to leverage what they've got. And I that's what it feels like to me, where in the enterprise space it was like, yeah, we're all kind of, you know
there were no winners at all going
yeah,
on.
we were all moderately successful.
Yeah,
And you had Apple, who was like, honestly, we're kicking butt over here on the game of life.
yeah,
Not doing so well in Monopoly. We would like to do better at that particular game. We're not necessarily losing, but we're not really getting ahead. So we're going to do something crazy.
yeah,
And that's the sense that I got, and it's like that moment in Monopoly where everyone suddenly sits up and starts counting their money and starts looking at their properties and starts looking at the other players' properties and starts scheming in their head.
yeah.
And that's the exact feeling that I have right here. We're literally watching a large game of Monopoly being played out right now.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's funny. I mean, you can tell that was a dramatic moment for a lot of people because, for example, last week we were talking about the return of BlackBerry, right? They're making their new phone. They're making all
Yeah.
sorts of announcements. They figured out their finances. Their stock's on the rebound. This announcement happens that day. The stock at IBM dumped 10%. I mean, it was just like a sorry, at BlackBerry. Well, Microsoft didn't fare too well through the day either. But
Yeah.
That's a slightly different reason.
Yeah, we have confounding variables in
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. It was that was the insult to the injury that would come later in the week. But yeah, so it was like, I mean, it was one of those things that everybody agreed the moment this announcement was made from a financial perspective that okay, something big just happened. And what I think is interesting about it is that it's not a very sexy deal.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, outside of the bloggers and the real techie files, it didn't get any big attention because number one, like you're talking about enterprise software, like there is very little that is more boring than enterprise software when it comes to software, and yet it's hugely important and a massive part of a lot of people's bottom lines. Um, but it's at the same time, it's like it doesn't. It's not the sort of thing that normally catches front page news, and yet it was so big a deal that yeah, this was it was definitely noteworthy.
Well, it's a
Um,
combination of things, right? It's A, it's Apple. B, it is with a company that Apple started to hate, and so you just got the juicy storyline to begin with, and
yeah,
then I think C, people go, this has the potential to actually be a big financial deal.
yeah,
Which I think in one of the articles, your Cringely
I
article,
cringely, yeah,
yeah, where he's like, maybe not, but I don't know.
yeah,
I've kind of crazy. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to think of it, other than again, it's like, okay, now how's everyone going to react to it?
yeah. Well, it's funny. I mean, one of the first things I did, or one of the big things that came out was this is such a big and kind of weird shift that I think a lot of people a lot of people don't know what to make of it. And it's so there a lot of this like stuff is, especially like articles that you're reading, are kind of shallow analysis of it, and there's huge disagreements. It's like I cringely is like he's saying this is not a big deal at all. You got Motley Fools are like this is the biggest thing that's happened in technology ever. It's
Yeah,
like, you've got these huge differences of opinions about it. I did like the one, ZDNet had a article where they listed who they believe the winners and losers are going to be. Obviously, IBM and Apple are going to be the big winners in this one. And it seems to be generally agreed that Apple is the biggest winner out of the two, because they're going to be selling. They're trying. It's a huge market to sell their devices to. Companies tend to have a lot of money to throw around, so it's there's some real potential there. And it just sort of, whereas IBM already has a stronghold in that market,
yeah,
so it's not necessarily going to move more IBM stuff. Losers. One of the interesting things is like you talk about part of this thing is, like you said, there was a direction the game was going. Some people were slowly building, some people were slowly losing. Microsoft is still the undisputed king of enterprise, but they can't get a mobile solution together to save their lives. So there's this
yeah,
opening up that other companies are able to come into with tablets and phones, and Android is the budget choice for a lot of these companies, but
yep,
Apple is the BY bring your own device choice for most of these companies. So there's just all this there's all this weirdness going on, like who can win, what can happen here, and the direction that it was going was Android was slowly trying to put together a security suite to give you enterprise devices that ran Android that had the security and the ease of use that Apple offered that would allow these companies to make the budget choice and say, look, it's good enough, let's do that. And all of a sudden, there's this massive differentiator between Android and iOS that wasn't there on Monday. Android doesn't have a huge back end enterprise solution to back them up. They're doing the patch. Everything up to this point had been patchwork. There were IBM back end things for specific companies. SAP and Oracle, SAP and Oracle were moving and we're doing different stuff. When I was working at Genentech, SAP was just rolling out their iOS solutions, but there were iOS apps specifically built for Genentech. Now, I'd be really surprised to see if that code foundation hadn't found its way into other companies. Once you work out the framework, then you just slap other companies' brands on it and stuff. But it
logo.
was yeah, exactly. But it was still it's still stuff that was there wasn't a holistic solution. There wasn't a big army of engineers working on a new platform for a specific operating system at these companies, and that's where Android's still stuck today. And uh, um, Samsung by proxy is going to be affected the same way because they were the biggest of the of your Android phone sellers. So to not be able to have that market explode for Android means that Samsung's going to be hurt the most of all of your Android sellers because they're the biggest Android sellers. They're the ones that are going to they presumably had the biggest market to edge out. Obviously, SAP and Oracle are not going to be thrilled about this either. Um, which I'm glad. I hate SAP. That's such a stupid software suite. I'm.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's awful. It's awful. Their UI is just so nutty. I mean, it's like it was so clearly designed 20 years ago of a UI, and even though they keep building up the back end and getting better servers and stuff and coming up with new solutions, it's still such an archaic way to navigate everything. And you're just like, why can't you just make this like HTML? Why can't you make it like a website? What is so hard about that? They have struck me as a lot of enterprise companies have always struck me, which is they're so entrenched that they're all about the legacy. They're all about keeping people comfortable, and they just bog down technology. And so I mean, come on, learning how to do stuff online, people do in their spare time at home. You've got classes to teach you how to enter a couple fields into SAP. Like any company that runs SAP you got to take like special training courses because it's so
Right.
crazy and it's stupid. It's so bad. So I'm glad to see them suffer. Um,
All right.
I think the most interesting one in all of this though, to watch how it affects them is Microsoft.
Mm. I was reading an article and I thought it was interesting. They were like, in a lot of ways, Microsoft and Apple are headed in like they're switching places where it, Apple used to be like, we do everything. We own it all.
Yeah,
And what you're watching is Apple slowly say, actually, IBM, we'll let you run the enterprise. We'll let you do these analytic apps. We've got our core business and competencies, and we're cool with letting you do stuff. And and Microsoft is pulling everything in and
yeah,
saying, no, we're gonna make our own phones. We're gonna do our own software. We're gonna bring this all in house now. We'll
yeah,
we'll do everything. And so which is a similar thing that we've talked about, like uh, that we've posed between Google and Apple, right? Can Google get better at hardware faster than Apple can get better at um, the internet or whatever?
yeah,
Um, it's a similar. It's similar to that, but I don't know. I guess it's slightly different. But it's like you're watching Microsoft isolate themselves, and you're watching Apple, slowly break out, which I guess it makes sense, right? With Microsoft, it's like, oh, things aren't going in the direction we want. Okay, it's time to pull back, time to reassess, recollect, do things our way because we believe we can do it better. Whereas Apple's experiencing success and is growing and saying, okay, we're willing to give this part up because we're being successful in other areas and there's no reason for us to be greedy right at this moment.
right, yeah. And I think well, I think they're both heading towards. Apple is so far down the road of we do everything ourselves, we keep everything in house that them growing and expanding. At this is they're both. It's like you say they're switching spots, and I understand why you say that, but it's like they're still so far at the two ends of the
Oh,
spectrum that they're just heading towards each other at the
gotcha.
currently.
That's fair.
Um, but at the same time, it's like one of the big things that
Well,
I've
from a
I've
mobile standpoint, I think that's not entirely true.
That's okay. Yeah, okay. I'll see that. I can agree with that. I think what's one of the things that's interesting is that finance has been an interesting one to watch Apple deal with because it's like they when somewhat legendarily when Square first came out and they were putting together their little piece of hardware Steve Jobs and Johnny Ives met with the team at Square, and Johnny Ives basically told them how to make the Square reader look
Mm.
because as far as they were concerned, they wanted it to be successful. I mean, they knew that that was going to be huge, but they didn't mind letting this other company handle that and do that, and and leverage the two different companies. That idea that I think Apple's oftentimes gets really beat up for never wanting to let anybody else do anything, which is true. But it's what they want to do is they want to make sure the experience is right. And I think in this case, what you'll find is that IBM and Apple are going to work very closely in asking the question, what is the user experience at the very end, and does it feel right? Does it feel like Apple? And which is, by and large what Apple's done in their finance, and it's what their solution for, their wallet is going to be. They're not going to handle the transactions. They're not going to handle the credit card numbers. They're going to let somebody else do that, but it's going to look and feel like Apple. And that's what they're doing in the business is, they might be doing, it'll look and feel like Apple, and that's what they care about. Even if somebody else is building all the back end technology.
Right.
I do think I think there's this dilemma though that I keep coming into when I look at this stuff, where it's like, when it comes to Microsoft specifically, because they're still so entrenched on the larger the non-mobile form factors, whether it's desktops or laptops. You're still going to be, IBM is critical in this, because you still are going to be walking around with your iPhone, but presumably you're going to have a Windows 8 phone or computer on your desk, running your other enterprise software. So I think Microsoft is not the biggest, is not a huge loser in this. I think I don't even think that this will really move the needle for them, except that it makes it harder to go down the direction that they want to go down. They want the needle to move positively in mobile, and I think it's just going to stay where it is. Whereas I think companies like BlackBerry and I think even Android are going to see what progress they have made, get beat up, and I think that's unfortunate for them.
Do you really think that, or are you just saying it?
That it's unfortunate for them?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's unfortunate-ish.
You're a fanboy. It's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be really interesting. I do think the one thing I will say is it'll be 2 or 3 years before we really see any huge side effects of this deal. I don't think you're going to see a mad rush for enterprise companies to, big businesses to move all of a sudden all over to Apple.
No, it doesn't work that way. Are you kidding me? You won't see the first fruits of these deals for 3 months.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying
purchase cycles are so long,
and I'm just not even sure that you'll really see huge, like you won't even see these trends that we're trying to guess at what's going to happen here. You won't really be able to evaluate it for a couple of years, like what happened, who won, and how big of an effect did this deal have in it. The one thing I'm not sure about is how exclusive this IBM Apple deal is. Is it one of those things where IBM Mobile First for iOS? I wonder if SAP and Oracle are going to come along now and feel like they're forced to play ball with Apple too and come up with a similar suite. And all of a sudden you've got all the major enterprise back-end guys that have a non-mobile solution that was compatible with Windows, and then a mobile solution that's compatible with iOS, and Android's really left out in the cold unless you're using a complete
HP.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Which is delivering the new style of IT. So it's got that.
Yeah, it's good, which is nice. Get that call from
me. So I'm sure Microsoft hasn't had quite the opportunity yet to assess what Apple and IBM's announcement was yet. because at least 18,000 of their workers were distracted.
Yeah.
I would say all of their Nokia employees were distracted.
Oh
And,
man.
and then the rest of Microsoft's employees were just semi worried, is maybe the best
Yeah.
way to put it. Which I think we and everybody else called it last week when they were talking, when he gave that memo
Yeah.
about, refocusing and stuff. You went, yeah, that equals layoffs. I was a little surprised that the hammer came down this soon.
Yeah. They didn't let that digest at all before they were like cleaning house.
Yeah, you're just kind of like, I don't know. Those kind of moves are always weird for me because it's clearly he's hitting a financial target. You know what I mean? It's one of
Yeah.
those. It's a large round number, and will the ultimately one be exactly that? Probably not, I guess. But what it means is they're targeting a a financial number, and they did the division of wages by whatever that number was, and went, all right, 18,000, cool. What will happen?
Yeah. 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 It's um it's
So
crazy.
12,500 of which are soon to be former Nokia,
Yeah.
Nokia, sorry, employees, and then it sounds like the remaining, 5 grand will mostly be contingent workers. Is kind of what I was picking up, I think. Though it sounds like it'll be a little more surgical throughout the rest of Microsoft.
Yeah, it does sound like it's a general shrinking of the population of Microsoft. But the yeah, the big one is that they're basically like, yeah, they're firing everybody from Nokia, which is just kind of surprising. I mean, I guess I guess you know,
It's funny you talked about earlier how Microsoft has this legacy business that they're not just going to get rid of, and and is throwing cash at them, and it generally makes money. Part of that too is part of their history and their culture and their lore, and so they're not just going to burn the Windows 8 ships, and I don't blame them for not doing that.
yeah,
But it's almost like they didn't own Nokia. They don't care about their flip phone business. It
yeah.
doesn't, you know what I mean? They're like, whatever, dude.
And
Numbers.
and in all fairness, I mean, if you think about it, the reason why they bought Nokia was because the company was a disaster. I mean, there's
Well,
always
they were the number two smart headset, whatever, I don't know, dumb phone manufacturer in the world.
yeah, but they weren't making any money. I
Mm.
mean,
Were they
yeah,
not? Which I guess I just I don't know. I understand what you're saying. There's a part of me that's like missed opportunity. I think.
I think there is missed opportunity going on, but at the same time, it's like, I think I think that there has got to be some truth behind the whole Elop thing of, he got a giant bonus for the company getting bought, so he was incentivized to let the company stumble a little bit. That being said, I feel like he probably guessed that if there was a way to save the company, it was worth more money. That's always the argument, right? It's like there's two incentives. It's, if things go really poorly, at least get the company bought, and that's why they give him the bonus. But give it your old freshman try because that's worth even more money. And I got to believe that that's his perspective. It wasn't like he wasn't out to destroy the company so Microsoft could buy it. I think they just had a business model that was one that was going the way of the dinosaur. They were selling. They won by being the number one seller of a particular commodity that was driven so down, so depressed in price that it just there was no margin on it anymore. It was they were and the only way to make money was to continue to innovate, create better and cooler products, and everything that I had seen, and I think the market bore evidence of this, is that they did a poor job of innovating. They were suffering BlackBerry disease. It's not like these guys are dumb, and it's not like they're these business leaders are bad. It's just the culture of the company wasn't one that was producing fruit, and all of a sudden Microsoft buys it for some reason, and you hope they're buying it because they've got this really great game plan, but to turn the ship around.
Yeah.
But I think the guy who architected the deal, that had faith in the deal, quit slash got fired almost as soon as the deal was done. New guy comes in and goes, no, I think we just bought a shipwreck, and like you said, they don't have any emotional bond to it. So
Yeah.
Finland was never going to let this happen because, well, this is our national heritage, and Ballmer wasn't going to let it happen because this was his big deal. But the fact that it needed to happen, I think, has been kind of evident for a long time, and I don't think it's fun. I feel bad for those people. I really do.
This
But
time I believe you.
Thank you, because I do, and I really, yeah, it's unfortunate. And I hate to be brutal about it, but it's a company that wasn't bearing fruit. What are you supposed to do? Maybe you could say it was bad leadership and stuff, but fine, you weren't succeeding. And if you were there, you're working for this company, and you're having, and you feel like there is success, and then leadership keeps leading you astray, like get the heck out of Dodge. Go somewhere where your great ideas can take off. And maybe that's easier said than done, I suppose. But uh, you know, creative destruction of the markets, I think, is going to have some power in this. And I think long term, this was something that needed to happen because it was a company that for I know. I guess my point is,
I agree with you. I do. I think what it means is that Android's going to take over the developing worlds, or nations, which is fine, and Android will be okay with that. I think that is something where Nokia probably had some experience and expertise that could have been used, and they're just going to dump it all.
yeah,
And and he hasn't been around long enough to fully evaluate it to see what they can do.
yeah,
Um, they're getting all in on the smartphones, and because on another level, I'm like, they're focusing. I like that. I can appreciate that. I'm an Apple fanboy. I get it, and so, I can applaud that. I'm also just kind of like, man, you already had it all. I really don't feel like you did a full analysis of it. But I don't know. I mean, you remember one time, short-term HP CEO said we're getting out of the computer business because we don't make any money on it, and that worked out well for him.
yeah.
So
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's good.
and let's be honest, HP's computer business is still not making money. So,
Yeah, how wrong was he?
but it's also looked at as a gateway device, or it helps complete the portfolio, I guess.
Yeah,
Is kind of that thought process where they're like, yeah, you're right, we don't make money on that, but we make money on the software and services that are related to it, so we're gonna keep it. So
yeah,
I just feel
yeah.
like there could have been a similar thing with the dumb phones, but maybe not. Maybe I'm
Yeah. I'm, but I think they're in this weird place of, um, you know, the market share for Windows phones is shrinking in literally every market that they're in. It's just completely going the
yeah,
wrong direction for them. And at on Thursday or on Tuesday, you got this IBM Apple deal, and I'm sure the business insiders knew that this was coming. I'm sure that wasn't a shock to Microsoft and Google. They at least knew the rumblings of it in the background. That Apple
maybe.
was working on an enterprise deal. Um, and I just get the feeling that you got this giant group of people that are working for you that haven't produced a really effective piece of technology in a very long time, and you'd think you'd have these teams together of brilliant engineers, but how it's like I do not place the blame of BlackBerry on the shoulders of squarely on the shoulders of their leadership. Their leadership could have done things to change it, but the guys underneath them weren't innovating. I mean, that's just as simple as as it was.
Right.
They were allowed to, and the teams had become teams that couldn't do what they needed to do anymore. And I just get a feeling that, yeah, you're right. I do agree with you that he's so new to the position. It'd be very difficult for Nadal to really evaluate that effectively. And so this was emotionally safe for him, as opposed to being strictly logical. And there probably were a bunch of advisors that were telling, that had made up their mind already, and they argued it. It was more him judicating between different arguments as opposed to, as opposed
Right.
to the one who made the decision. And so, but you just look at what they're doing. They're like you said, they're getting rid of all their low priced, low end phones. They're getting rid of anything that was running Android. They're getting rid of, it's becoming. They are going to focus on building high end Microsoft phones, iPhone competitors,
Yeah.
and I don't know.
Which, if Apple's any indicator, you can do pretty well in the smartphone only market.
Yeah, except we've had this long term. We talked about it just last week that how most of the time markets can only support two major competitors.
Yeah.
Maybe you're lucky one generation, one period of time it can support multiple, but really and truly, it's just there's two platforms, and they're super far behind. They're going the wrong direction. I guess my question is, it's like I can't even see a path to dominance for them, because it's like you'd have to have you'd either have to have Google or Apple just completely give up in order to give them space, because it's like anything that they do, any big innovation that they come up with, Google and Apple will figure out how to replicate the effect of it, if not just completely rip it off, in short order. And it's like, Microsoft's biggest advantage was that they had this suite of enterprise, things, back end stuff that was already tethered into all of their code, and Apple figured out a way to replicate the ends. And does that mean that Apple will become the absolute dominant player? Not necessarily, but it does mean that it's not going to give Microsoft any leverage there. It's not going to be something to propel them forward. The only thing that they have left is the install base of XP. Really and truly. I mean, I guess 7 as well, but
Yeah, no, I'm with you. What it will do is um, it will just slowly erode Microsoft's share. It's not going to go anywhere huge. It's one of those where they just might lose like 10%. Sorry about the train. They might lose just like 10% over the next couple years, which you and me and the media, no big deal. We won't really notice it too much. Microsoft would be like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's billions of dollars.
yeah. 1 percentage point when you play with their numbers are big numbers.
Dude, no doubt, man. No doubt about that. HP's the same way.
Yeah. Which is what's so funny about the fact that your computer division doesn't make any money. Well, it does make money. It makes like 1 or 2%, which is a couple $1 billion. It's still a tremendous amount of money.
Well, I mean, that's the crazy part. It's like, for HP's PC division, they make it's a ton. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's something crazy, like $50 billion a year in terms of revenue sales.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, it's astronomically high. But yeah, they're like, oh yeah, and our profit is like $1 billion.
Yeah.
Which you're still like, that's like 9 zeros behind the one there. That's not bad. And
That's $1 billion.
And that's after you've already paid everybody. Let's be clear.
Right.
And so, Whereas in the printer division, it's a little different. The numbers aren't nearly as high, but the delta between the two is very small. And so
Yeah.
it's actually like, from a revenue standpoint, it's a fraction. From a profit standpoint, it's a multiplier.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, we don't do just 1 billion. Trust me, we do more than that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I do
yeah,
believe
it's
you.
interesting um, how that works.
I do, yeah, and I think I don't know. I think it's kind of a broader picture of these layoffs. I think that everybody is so funny because they're like, there's two ways to do layoffs, right? There's the two bandage strategies, as it were. There's the rip it off fast,
Yep.
and there's the rip it off slowly, and they both have you know positives and negatives. You do it fast, and it's hugely disruptive, but there's less of a hit to morale. Everybody just knows, okay, today the layoffs started, today the layoffs ended. It's crazy and tumultuous during that period, but everybody settles down pretty quick because, well, you got to keep your job. Doing it slowly it's less disruptive, but it's a huge hit to morale and productivity. And
Well, yeah, maybe. I actually kind of ish like the way that HP's done it because they've announced similar numbers, right? We're gonna go 25,000 people and 15,000 people. Just like they've
But
unleashed.
HP is a dramatically bigger company, though, right? I mean, like from a
Uh,
manpower, isn't it?
yeah, I don't know how many people work for Microsoft.
How many people work for?
How many people work Microsoft? Um, yes, you are going to cut employees. Says here 127,000 people worldwide.
For Microsoft?
Yeah,
Yeah, but HP's got 317. I mean, it's three.
that's true.
It's three times the company. So by percentage, yeah, you guys are going to lay off 30,000 people, but it's still a
Well,
much.
and at least the way that HP does it is they'll say, um, we're not going to fire people. We're just not going to fill those positions anymore. So as people quit and or retire or whatever, as people leave, we're just that position will be gone
Right.
unless it's been deemed as like uber critical whateverness. Then we'll let you fill it. And so there's certain organizations where they're like, no, this one's done. Or certain businesses where they're just like, nah, we're not investing in this one anymore. As people leave, it's done. And then it does hit a certain tipping point where they're like, all right, guys, you got to find new jobs somewhere. And and then what'll happen is as people quit in other, or leave again in other parts of the company, they'll get filled with people from that dying group. Does that
Right.
does that make sense? And so in a sense, sure, it's a large layoff number when they say 25,000 people, but in another sense, no one's having the tough conversation. Uh,
Yeah, which is nice.
yeah, and it's more work to do it, but I think the result is better. I mean, like the team that I'm on right now, we've got a guy who we're working with where his group is being shut down, and he's literally doing like a tryout for our team.
Yeah.
And we're like, maybe he's a fit, maybe he's not. We don't know. And so and so it's stuff like that's happening.
I
And yeah.
but I think one of the like as the direction I was going was that thought of I agree. I like the way that goes, but it takes a lot more time and it
Oh
requires a
yeah,
lot of
it's a
it
multi-year
create.
process.
Yeah, whereas Microsoft wants to get this done in a couple of months, and so like as I was saying, like there's these two different strategies, like the long way to do it that's less disruptive, or the quick way that's more disruptive but that hurts morale less. And the problem, as you said already, is that HP or that Nokia is easy. You do because there's you're going to get rid of so much of the company that you don't mind the massive disruption because you're majorly changing what that division of Microsoft is about. You're fundamentally changing it, so you don't you're going to disrupt it anyways. Whereas the rest of their cuts, the other 5,000 people they're going to fire, are going to be, even though it's a relatively small number, especially in comparison to the entire company. Um, but it's one of those things where those ones are going to be surgical and long term. So it's like you get the major
Yeah.
disruption, morale, knockdown of firing 12,000 people, 13,000 people on Thursday, and then you've got the long long range, just, oh my gosh, I'm going to keep my job for the next 6 months, which they say boosts productivity, but
Well,
really hurts morale, and long term it's bad.
well, again, I think, and they'll communicate it similar like HP did for those 5,000, where they'll be like, "Don't worry about it. You're not. We're going to let this happen organically, or because they'll do that in a year. That's easy to do because you
Yeah.
just go hiring freeze, done.
Yeah.
And then you just wait until you're 5,000 light, and then you say, okay, now we can, open them back up again, which is how HP did it, and which is annoying if you're trying to move around in the company. Don't get me wrong, because
Yeah.
you're not going anywhere. So, so there's that. And with the Nokia guys, they're just like, dude, they don't even have Microsoft badges. They're not in the company. It's so easy, and they're like, they're not gonna come work in Redmond. So,
Yeah.
see ya.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the classic. It's not personal, it's business move. Which you're
Yeah.
like, man, kind of a jerk move, but I get it too.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting seeing them have to make that decision, and
Well, it's just normally you see that from a company, like BlackBerry, where they're struggling financially, and they're like, we need to do something now to change this up. Again, it's like it's an internal monopoly game. We need to really just like get after this because we're gonna lose otherwise.
yeah.
And so whereas like with HP, it was still making money every year. It wasn't in a financial crisis, and so it was kind of like, no, we can take our time and do this a little more smartly instead of just taking a blunt object to it. But
Yeah.
anyways, that's way too much talk about an announcement. Let's talk about robots.
Oh man. So Apple's making a new phone, and
Really?
depending on what blogs you listen to, they've either started or they haven't started, or they've started with the 4.7-inch model, but they're never
Is
going to
it
make
too
the
early to
five and
talk
a half
about
inch
naming
model.
conventions? What you think they'll actually name it? Is it too early to do that?
I think it's too early.
Okay. Do you think they'll just go with the iPhone 6?
It's too early, but we're going to do it anyways. I think so. I don't know. I think they're gonna do like what they did with the 5C and the 5S. They're gonna come up with, it's gonna be the iPhone 6 something, the iPhone 6 something, the iPhone 6 something. They'll have the 5. The 6C
Okay.
will be the 5S. And the more I think about it, the more I think that they're not gonna do a major chip upgrade. I gotta believe that they're gonna do it. I don't know. I
Okay.
don't know. But
Anyways, we'll get there.
they're moving on to they're moving into full on production of these things. But the inevitable is occurring, and uh, I've been predicting this since, I was probably 15 years old, that the only thing cheaper than slave labor is free labor, and it's coming. And it's even in China. Robotics. The capital expense on robots is huge, right?
Right.
But the operating expense is turning on a light switch. Whereas with human beings, the capital expense is virtually non-existent. You just have to teach them how to do something. You're not buying them. Generally, and but the operating expense is kind of fixed. It's what you pay, and it goes up over time. And so Apple and more importantly Foxconn, their big old partner in Honhai, have developed. They've slowly been automating all these process lines over time. Generally, the automation has been in things that really that are too high skilled for even high skilled people to be able to do. Like for example, one of the big innovations they had was in the last I think it was the five. They when they cut the glass and they cut the steel rim for the two different phones. They everything comes within a certain margin of it has a
Tolerance.
certain
Yeah.
tolerance, correct? And so generally when you're designing stuff, what you say is you make the tolerances such that the biggest screen, the biggest piece of glass will fit in the smallest hole, which means sometimes if you put the smallest piece of glass in the biggest hole, there'll be a bigger gap. And
Right.
that drove Johnny Ives crazy because it didn't look right. So what they did was they basically had this process go, okay, we've got our tolerances that we're willing to accept, but we're going to have a robot measure everything and keep track of what the actual measurements are. And so we know each piece of glass, we've got them all. Each one has its own identification, its own number, and each piece of metal has its own number. And we're going to take the two and we're going to put them together
Right.
when they fit. And that's something that just people can't do. It's not, that's not practical. So you have a robot do that. And as you get more and more into it, it's getting to the point where they're just, they're taking more and more people out of it. So this assembly line in Hanai is going to get 10,000 robots. There's still like 100,000 employees working at this place. Throughout its various factories in China, Foxconn employs more than 1.2 million workers. They've reportedly hired an additional 100,000 workers in China. So it's one of those things where the numbers are still huge. I mean, they're employing unbelievable scales of people. But the thing is that, one robot can do the work of a lot of different people because it never quits. It never gets tired. It never goes to the bathroom. It never needs to be paid. It just does its job again and again and again. And, we're getting better at making robots. We're getting better at programming robots. We're getting better at making them forward compatible. And the trick is, part of it is you make a robot that can do many different things, and then, and then what you do is you also design what you're building to be built on that equipment. And so, this is the direction they're going. And it's just one of those things where how many people would they would have had to hire if they weren't going to have it all be done by robots? I have no idea. But that's the direction they're going. They're trying to fire all their people. Despite the insane cheapness of labor in China, it's still
Well,
cheaper
I
to build
mean,
robots.
I don't know about fire other people, but
Yeah. Well, the thing is that you still need an army of engineers and technicians to operate everything.
yeah.
But I mean, it's an army of engineers and technicians is going to be a tiny fraction of what?
Yeah, well, and I'm thinking about like that 1.2 million workers, and they added an additional 100,000. Percentage-wise, if we like put this in Microsoft terms, that would be like 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. That's a whole lot of robots.
Yeah. It's true, and it's a process. I mean, it's part of it is, and one of the things that's unfair here is Foxconn is the biggest electronics assembler in the world, and they don't build iPhones only. They're the primary builder of iPhones, and that's usually what they, when you
Yeah.
read about them, it's usually in relation to Apple, but they also build Xboxes and TVs and DVD players and Blu-ray players and electric shavers, and I mean they build everything. They are the biggest electronics assembler in the world.
Yeah.
And so it's it'd be interesting to see of that 100,000 people that they just hired, what projects are they working on? Is it one of those things where all the automation is going into Apple lines first, and then, and is it at Apple's direction, or is it something that Foxconn wants to see happen across all their different markets? But I guess my bigger thought is it's the trend. It's where it's going. And this is the irony of wanting to bring manufacturing back to America. It's and this is made evident with the the Made in America, Made in USA on the Mac Pros, that they're largely made by machines. It's like people are involved, yes, but the number of people that are required to build them are so small compared to what it used to be that it's cool, it's made in America, but most of the great jobs are the guys that are designing the robots that build all these computers. Um, and I think that's what you're going to see, and this trend in the future, and it's just it'll be fascinating to see what it does to China,
Yeah.
as because so much of their growth has been about around the fact that they hire 1.2 million people to do manufacturing jobs, you know, and
Yeah, it's interesting too, where it's like in the U.S. it took a really long time for manufacturing to kind of disappear and/or be replaced by robots.
yeah,
It's happening faster in China.
yeah,
Not going to quite get the same growth boom that the U.S. had.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
faster.
They are going to get fat soon, though, and that's exciting as everybody becomes, as they all become service industry jobs, just like us. So you got that to look forward to.
Yes. You're welcome, China.
Yeah. Go to McDonald's; it tastes great. Um,
But maybe you're not inside. Maybe you want to go do something like baseball. Go play a game.
mm. So I like, obviously we talk about some particular companies and pieces of technology more than anything else, but we like the outside technologies too, and there's a new one that the Nike is coming up with. They're more than just your cool kicks. Nike's building a baseball glove. So James, do you have a baseball glove, James?
I do. I have two
Where do you keep them?
in my sports box of stuff.
Nice. I have a baseball glove that our dad bought for me, and I don't know when because it fits my adult hand. I mean, like it's an adult baseball glove, but I never played baseball as an adult. But I've had one I've literally have no recollection of when I got this baseball glove, but I keep it in my trunk just in case anybody ever wants to play catch. I'm ready to
Wow.
go. You want to know how many times
Three.
people? None. Literally none. I get it out and play catch with myself, but nobody ever wants to play catch. And you want to know why? It's because we're all fat and we all sit and do um
Or it's not everyone carries their baseball glove around in their trunk.
yeah, I guess
I
that's true.
played I played catch in the last month.
What? Who'd you play catch with?
Some people from church.
Oh, that's cool.
We were out at a lake having fun. I brought my gloves. The trick is to have two gloves
Ah, yeah,
in your
that's
trunk.
how much does a baseball glove cost? Oh, well, I know that I'm. You know what? Speaking of, um, so, so the whole reason I brought this up, Nike's coming up with a new baseball glove, and traditionally, like, obviously, the baseball glove is traditionally leather, and you get it, and then you have to
Right.
spend like months oiling it and forming it to a baseball,
Yeah, that's
and
part of the fun.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like, guess that's the tradition, the smell, the feel, and everything. Well,
Yeah.
Nike is destroying the magic of a baseball glove by
Destroying America
ruining.
is what you
Yeah,
just told me.
pretty much. It's funny. It's funny. That's kind of what my reaction to this whole thing was. I really like the idea of this, but basically they're coming up with this new baseball glove, and they're
All right.
taking cues from its footwear advances. The outfit leveraged its hyperfuse and flexible flywire technology to cut out extra heft and add versatility. They said leather is still the best option for the palm, but they do like laser perforating to it now, so that it's more flexible already. And basically, what we've taken the traditional leather of the palm and perforated it to remove some of the structures so it forms more quickly.
Mm.
And therefore the glove is ready to use straight out of the box. And they used it at the MLB All Star game this
Yeah.
year. They're Gonzalez. I don't know who he plays for. It doesn't matter. But yeah, they'd actually got some play on national TV, and it looks like the webbing between the thumb and the pointer finger is like plasticky too. Um, and I'm sure it's some sort of
Yeah.
soft rubber. But yeah, it's cool. It's actually I think it's really cool. Carlos Gonzalez, um, and he's the Colorado Rockies. There we go. It's called the Vapor 360 Fielding Glove. Um, I'm sure it's crazy expensive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
This thing's got to be where. Let's see here. I feel like they would have given a price on this article had it actually had a price.
Yeah. Let's see. Fielding
I mean, this thing's
glove.
got to be a couple $100, right?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. You know, you can't even buy it. Come on now. Nike.com. There we go. No, that's. Oh yeah, okay, that's right. Yeah. Okay, yeah. There's literally not even a price.
All right.
So it's expensive, is what we're getting at. Um, but
This feels like a solution to a non-existent problem.
a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah, which in reality, like you said, is actually taking away some of the fun. Which I
Yeah,
guess is what people say about some of the autonomous vehicles. Like, dude, driving is the fun part. Why would you?
yeah. That's
I'm
kind of
like,
mine.
no, this is different.
Yeah. I guess that's actually why I bring this up is because it's like, it's yeah, part of the magic of baseball and that whole culture of it is getting a glove and forming it and everything,
Yeah, the
and
smell of the oil and wrapping it in saran wrap and sleeping underneath it. I don't know. That's fun, and you don't do it all the time, right? You do it for a little bit, and that
yeah,
makes it your glove. And I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
yeah. I gotta get a second glove though. You're absolutely right. You know what I should do? I should get like one of those like cheap 12-year-old plastic ones and have my nice leather one. That's and the one
Sounds
I
like a
gotta
good plan.
yeah, actually, that's
Nah,
almost a
just go to Big Five, pick up one of those $35, $45 gloves, and then you can have the pleasure of forming it and making it work. And
yeah, 4 minutes in my hand. Um, yeah,
huh, interesting.
yeah,
Nike.
yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, definitely. That's the word. It's interesante. Um,
Hmm.
but
I'm gonna let you keep
so
going. One more, and then I'll go.
okay, cool. So this is another cool one. This is just a fascinating thing. Talking about who's winning and losing in the mobile market. The iPhone 5S has outsold the Galaxy S5 in the first full month of the Galaxy being on sale.
Hmm.
So
Is that's obviously bad, but
that's
why?
by and large, I think it's not necessarily the amazingness of the iPhone so much as it's the just the utter dud of a phone that the S5 was. I think there was absolutely nothing compelling. There was no reason for people to go out and buy it. They didn't do a good job selling it. They
That
didn't.
was the one with their own like Touch ID that didn't really work, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it sold terribly. Sold terribly. Um, so it's that thing of the upper end of the as Samsung and Google continue to take more and more of the overall market, that highly profitable high end market is something that Apple is more and more firmly in control of, and and it's becoming the high end Android phone is becoming more and more of a niche inside of a niche. you know, I want a high end phone, but I want it to be Android is not something that many people are doing.
Yeah,
Generally,
this is the classic when you look at the PC market and you look at PCs like above $1,000. Apple actually has like 70% market share
yeah,
there, and then when you go below $1,000, they have like 0%.
yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's why they're sitting at 10
Right.
overall. And you get the sense that the exact same thing's happening in the smartphone market, where you get above, I don't know what the magic number is, $500.
Probably.
You know, they're significant. And then when you go under 500, they're like, yeah, we have like nothing.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I think even more to the point of it's anything above $100, um, after the what's that word where they do the thing where they give you
Subsidy.
thank you, yeah, after $100 after the subsidy and you buy an iPhone, $100, under $100 before after the subsidy and you buy Android, and you know yeah, that's clearly where it's going, and Apple's still making a crazy enough profit where they're taking the majority of the profit for the entire
That's
industry.
that's going to be tough for Samsung
Yeah,
because you're going to sell a ton of phones and not make the money you're used to making.
yeah, and
That's tough.
and it used to be that they were double dipping, where they were selling phones, making money on phones, but they were also basically building all the individual components for Apple, so they were making money off of the iPhone. And as a whole company, even though they're very different divisions. And now that TSMC is doing all of the chip stuff, and they're not buying screens or anything, more and more and more of the manufacturing is leaving, or component supply is leaving. Is leaving Samsung, and they went from double dipping and making tons and tons of money to no dipping, and they've run out of guacamole, and it's a bummer. But
And the nice part about all of us is that if you're not growing, you're pretty much dead in our book.
yeah, exactly. Why would you even be around as a company?
Yeah, you might as well just close the doors if you're not going to grow anymore. I mean,
Yeah,
who cares if you're still making money and just shrinking down to the size that you should be?
yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. So I don't know. Very interesting. I just
Okay. All right. All right. Um, let's switch subjects. Let's
Okay.
talk about insurance.
Okay.
Do you have insurance?
I don't know what kind of insurance.
I don't know. Let's start with car insurance.
I do have car insurance.
Do you have who's that with? Just out of curiosity.
Nationwide is on your side.
Really?
Yeah.
Going with the mom team.
Yeah. Didn't even get a employee discount. They were just the cheapest.
Really? All right. So is that do you actually have like an agent that you're working with?
No.
Or
I guess technically, but I've only talked to him like once, and he called me when I first signed up online and said, kind of went over all the numbers and everything. He said, "Yeah, I'm the guy on your account." I was like, "Cool." And then that was like 2 years ago, so I've probably had 3 different agents since then, and I've
Yep.
never talked to any of them. So
Yeah, no, I understand. We have a specific agent that we work with, and because part of it was we wanted to develop that relationship with them, and so we have.
who
We
are
also
you who are you with?
State Farm,
Mm,
but that's kind of a secondary issue. It was the person that we cared about,
mm.
and yeah, he's a guy where it's like will go out to dinner, hang out with him type thing,
Oh, nice.
that kind of relationship, because that was important to us. But there's all sorts of insurance out there. Car insurance is just one example. Another one is life insurance.
Yes.
If and you die, you could be insured. If I were you, I wouldn't have it because
Well, it's a good thing that
matter.
I am me, and I agree because I don't have it.
Now, if you were married and especially if you had kids, I would say that's different.
Yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for rubbing it in. I'm
yeah, no
alone.
problem. No problem. Uh, now, how about long-term disability? You got that one?
I don't
What about
know.
even through your employer?
That's why I say I don't know. I might have it through my
Mm,
employer. I've never
okay.
asked.
What about volcano insurance? You got that one?
I do not have volcano insurance. I'm quite confident.
Volcano insurance. All right, all right. So one of the things that you have not experienced yet, because
Volcanoes, yes.
Well, that's true. But one of the things you have also not experienced yet is the joys of a pushy insurance agent.
Hmm.
Because, they're paid a commission for how much insurance you have. And so they have an incentive for you to have a lot of insurance.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
The problem with that is that they are able to, uh, they're good at what they do. And so a lot of people feel taken. One of the biggest ones is something called whole life insurance. It's essentially you buy it and you have it for your life. And there's this idea in there that um, it also works as a savings account, and so you get a return, but then you also pay fees on it. Uh, the bottom line is that, and you get it for your entire life, and the whole idea is like if you get it when you're really young, it's cheap, and that rate's kind of locked in for the rest of your life as long as you make payments.
Yeah.
Um, there's another option out there called term life insurance that is, as it sounds, it's for a specific period of time, a term. And
Sort of like what your like car insurance would be, more along that lines, right? Or is it just a completely different paradigm?
no,
It
it's a
doesn't
little
make sense
different.
at
It's like
all.
saying, if I die in the next 20 years, I'll be covered.
Okay.
And so you'll pay into it for 20 years, and then you're done. you know, if you die, 20 years and a day later, your family gets nothing. It's kind of the idea.
You get nothing.
Nothing. Whereas if you had a whole life, even if it were 40 years down the line, you would still get it. The issue that whole life is significantly more expensive than term. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's something in the neighborhood of like if whole life was $100, term would be like $8. We're
Hmm.
literally talking like less than 10% of the cost. And all the financial gurus will tell you, pretend like you were paying into whole and just put that into your 401k
Yeah.
and set it's don't depending on your age, like for you, you're pretty young, you would do like a 30-year deal. They're like, that way at the end of your 30 years you would just pull the money from your 401k because that would be then tax free because you'd hit 55 and you're good to go. And they're like, and your return would be so much massively better. They're like, in almost every single case, they're like, you should go for term instead of whole life. The problem though is your insurance agent has a 10% of the commission size. And so they have a big incentive to get you into whole life. And if you ever have an actual agent, he will try to talk you into whole life insurance, period.
Huh. Yeah.
And this bugs people because they clearly do not have your best interest in mind for
Right.
this. I'll even go as far as to say the guy who I have, the guy who I would consider to be friends, who I know well, did it to me, and
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you do know I know how to do math, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and he goes, well, I have it, and it cost me this much. I'm like, that's great. Um, it's math. This does not make sense to do this. Why would you ever recommend it to me? And then I go, you just want it for the commission, and then you have that awkward silence, whatever. Okay, that was a very long setup.
Yeah. I like, it's interesting to learn about insurance, but I do. Where are we
This
going?
is an example, yeah. Um, this is an example of one of those real life services that just has a friction of information and something that technology can help with. And that is where Policy Genius comes into play. It is an education driven platform for buying insurance. So, right now, they're based in Brooklyn. And what they start off with is what they call an insurance checkup. This is a tool that will give you personalized advice and quotes from over 30 different insurance sellers. And it asks you a bunch of questions and then says, okay, based on what you told us, here's what we think you actually need based on algorithms and not sales quotas. And
Huh.
then here's who will actually give them. Because one of the other ones that I'm always like, I don't know. They're like, what do you want your limits to be? Like, how much do you think your life is worth? Like,
Wow. Yeah, I have no idea.
I yeah,
Because
and then well, and they play games where they're like, well, what do you? How happy do you want your kids to be? And do you want your wife to have to continue working when you pass away? If you
wow.
pass away, and before you know it, they're like, you need a $100 million policy, don't you? Or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Whereas their promise to people is, uh, we will we will give suggestions that make sense, and they're like, and we don't care about the commission size, because we're looking out for you. And what's cool about it is because they're able to turn it into a technology driven solution, you can go online, you don't have to talk to anybody, and then you can do the comparison shopping. It's like, which one is that? Is that Lending Tree? Is that the one where if you're looking for a loan, they'll they'll show you a bunch of bank loans?
Yeah, I think
Sounds
so.
familiar. And then you just pick the one that you're like, I like
Yeah.
this rate. Um, similar deal, similar deal to that. Um, I'll be honest. There's a part of me that's like, I feel like having an individual agent may have been. It's not quite worth what it used to be. Other than, to be fair, when looking at other properties, it's nice to have someone I can call on the phone and say, hey, just real quick, what's a quote for this?
Yeah,
Not have to go through the ringer. That's kind of nice.
that is nice.
But but yeah, anyways, I saw this Policy Genius is the name of it, and it's kind of a cool little setup that's their goal is to get rid of one of those pain points that people have in life that you'll have eventually one day. You'll be like, I know exactly what James is talking about.
Unless I
This is
don't get married.
annoying. You'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. All
Maybe
right.
this current date was the one. You never
Hey.
know.
Yeah, yeah. Don't jinx it. Um. Uh. Um. What was I gonna say? I'm distracted now. So finally, we're gonna get back around to this. I guess this is the last story for the night.
Yeah, I think so
So
too.
Amazon officially they did something this week. Unlike everybody else, they didn't just announce things; they actually did something. They launched after announcing Kindle Unlimited, which is their version of Netflix or it's rather their version of Amazon Instant. What Amazon? What's their video service called?
Prime, no, Instant Watch.
Yeah, Instant Watch for books. It's or Netflix for books is what everybody's calling it.
Yeah,
Um, basically, you sign up. It costs $10 a month. You can have as many books on your device as you want from their list, or you can do as many audiobooks as you want from their list.
nice.
Um, it is, yeah, it actually really is nice. And the library that they have options to is a little bit bigger than their library that is for what's it called? Their checkout, their like, because if you have Prime for $100 a month or whatever or a year, it's got like 400,000 books that you can check out one at a time. This one is you can do as many as you want, which for me is better because I tend to read multiple books at the same time. And it's got a bigger library and it's got the audiobooks, which is very cool.
Yeah, that is
Um,
cool.
and as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying it out. I figure, for the podcast, it's 30 days free at the very least. Um, so right now I'm listening to Brave, no, 1984,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so I got that on my phone, which is what I really like. Oh, the other thing is that their like checkout library only works on Amazon devices, so your Kindle Fire, Kindle stuff like that. So for someone with a Paperwhite like me, that's okay.
Oh,
But what's cool about this is that this rental service works on my iPhone too, and the reason that's important is because I can do the audiobooks on my iPhone and I can do the real books or the digital books on my Paperwhite, which is very nice. The real only problem of it is that the library is not gigantically huge. It doesn't have all the books in the world.
is that because
And
authors have to opt into it, or?
you, uh, it's actually the big publishing houses are, yes, there a lot of authors do have to opt into it, and they're working out the system on how they're going to do that.
Mm,
But the big thing is that it's the big five publishing houses are very reticent to jump into this, because
makes sense.
for the same reason that major studios are reticent to jump into the whole Netflix deal. But I think Amazon is going to try to basically do what Netflix does and do, become their this is their between create space and this is them becoming a publisher. And and if you get a couple of really good books, and it's if you can get a system seller, if you can get a good book that this is the only venue it's published on, that can be pretty huge for Amazon. But
Makes sense. So this is really only worth it if you read a lot, huh?
yeah, that's kind of what the determination was. If you're a big reader and you're spending, if you read more than one book a month and you don't really care what you read, or you don't care if they're classics and stuff, then that it's worth it. I probably will. I'll definitely give it a try for this month. I might have it for a month or two. I'm not sure I'm going to have it long term until they really expand the library. But the mechanics of it works great. You just go on Amazon, you check out all the different books. They've got different ways to sort it, so you can see where there's audiobooks, you can see where there's real books, or just regular old letter books, and all the different genres and stuff. So I really like the service in principle. And as they expand, which they will. I mean, it's not like they're going to continue to work with the big publishers, and as they get more and more books and
Totally.
and actually one of the big things is they got the big series. They got a couple of series that were super important. They paid top dollar to get the Harry Potters and the
Twilight, Hunger Games.
Hunger Games in there. Those are the two big ones that I remember, which is nice because
I
it's
know.
like I've never bought any of the Harry Potters, and
Really?
yeah, I've read them all, but
I got the British audiobooks. Awesome.
nice. I always borrowed them from sisters and girlfriends to read them all, and which was pretty effective. But it's kind of cool. I've actually thought that it would be nice to reread them, but I've never wanted to buy them again. And as we've already covered, since I'm alone in my life right now, I don't have any girlfriends to borrow them from.
Still have a sister.
That's true. That's true. But this will be nice just because it'll be able to jump it on the Kindle. And
Yeah.
it actually, I really like the idea though of this idea that as a holistic solution to no longer buying books. It's and I think, yeah, man,
It's part of that asset light shift.
yeah, exactly. And I think one of the cool things, one of the interesting things that I subscribe to a bunch of different blogs and subreddits and stuff about writing. So how they actually do one of the big questions is, how do authors get paid? Because if I download 1984 and then never read it, is George Orwell going to get any money? No, because he's dead. But but if practically for the people who do who do finance, at what point do you get paid? Is it when they download the book? Is it when they finish the book? And the answer is it's when they've read 20% of the book.
Really?
Is when you get your cut. Yeah, you've now, and that shifts depending, and I'm sure it'll shift over time, but that's their initial starting point. So it's sort of like YouTube. When do you get your view? As you're counting up your views, how much of a YouTube video do you have to watch in order for them to view? Do you just have to start the video? Do you have to finish the video? I don't actually know the answer to that question.
It's magic algorithm.
Yeah, exactly. It's fuzzy math.
Yep.
I
don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. I'm glad you like the service. I'm obviously be interested to hear if you keep going with it or not, or if you're like, it was okay.
Yeah. I definitely like having the audiobooks. The audiobooks are nice.
Audiobooks are fantastic.
Yeah. And I like that this is a very, very, very affordable way to do it.
Yeah.
It's funny. I mean, the service is expensive, but I guarantee you, it's because of the audiobooks. Yeah, it's the biggest audiobook library of this sort anywhere. Everybody else is you can rent books. This is, the real selling point here, I think, is going to be the audiobooks, and that might be what keeps me around, especially for those classics that can be very boring to read, but are, great to actually like to hear and have somebody just speaking at you.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, I
We'll see what
mean,
happens.
I've said that for a while, right? I listened to a bunch of biographies, and I used to struggle to get through them. And once I discovered kind of the audiobook thing, I was like, oh man, this is awesome.
Yeah,
And I can do biographies all day long now.
yeah, because they're relentless. They just keep talking.
I know. Well, and I actually can focus and pay attention to it. I just, but
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
it's good. Though recently I've been getting more into actual like reading. Right now I'm reading what is it? It's Dave Ramsey Told Him Money Makeover book, and so I've just never read it,
Yeah,
and it's not really an audiobook type of book. But I,
yeah,
I just added a book to my list now. It's only available in paperback, and I was just like, really? Come on, that's annoying. I'm
yeah.
gonna have to get the physical book. Ugh.
It's
So,
awful.
I know. Yeah. Anyways, cool, man. Cool. Um, good show. I
Yeah, definitely.
think. I don't know if I'll put it in our top 10, but it's not bad.
Wow, wow.
I know.
Ringing endorsement. At
I
least we
know.
waited till people have gotten all the way through the podcast to disappoint them.
Yeah. Yes. Well.
Title of the podcast, one of our top 10 podcasts.
Sorry. Well, and I had to wait till I got to the end to make that decision. But
Yeah.
which I would say it's not our fault. It's a bunch of
No, it's true.
announcements.
Yeah, it was a slow week.
Let's pass that buck on. Oh man. Well, anyways, let's see
All right.
here. Switch up the audio and all that fun stuff. Yeah, man. We will talk next week, and we'll do our show on Saturday though, because I'm gonna be busy Sunday. But it'll still be good. So everybody else, thank you for joining us. My name is James Furlo. My brother is Matthew Furlo, and we will talk next time.